Cat 34 Analyzing the causes of obesity worldwide. Currently, one of the biggest problems that society presents is the high rate of obesity that exists worldwide. There are cases of men, women, and children, whose health is affected by the different evils that it causes. Their organisms suffer all kinds of diseases and develop emotional disorders as a result of a system that enhances the physical aspect. So, it only remains to analyze what its causes are and how people can be sensitized to take action in this regard. First, you have to talk about poor diet. In many countries, the consumption of fast food has become a highly dangerous habit. Some people say that it is because of its low cost, while others make the lack of time an excuse. But aside from these reasons, there is no valid argument that compensates for the serious damage that they are causing. Also, the possible consequences in the future, in the medium or long term, should be enough to prevent them from continuing with this behavior. According to the figures revealed by the UN in recent studies on the subject, it has been possible to register almost 2 billion men and women with obesity problems. More than 3 million of these people die from diseases caused by it. This means that there are frequent cases of diabetes, cancer, hypertension and other ailments that are related to cholesterol and high levels in the body. In addition, it has been confirmed that the global obesity index has doubled, or even more, since 1980. It is not only due to the causes described above, but is largely related to a change in the lifestyle of people. On one side are social networks, which keep people connected at all times. This lack of mental repose affects their levels of stress, which promotes the release of hormones known as glucocorticoids. In excess, one of its consequences is obesity. While another factor to be taken into account is sedentary lifestyle, caused by the misuse of certain technological advances. Solving all these problems in the short term would be really complicated, but it is necessary to carry out measures in this regard as soon as possible. It is unacceptable that future generations have lower life expectancies than current ones. The tendency to consume junk food, however economic or practical, must be eradicated. Instead, you should opt for a balanced diet to maintain good health. And aspects such as sedentary lifestyle and excessive stress have to be controlled. Only through these measures can the cases of obesity around the world be reduced. Cat 35 How do social networks affect people? The benefits that social networks involve are indisputable. Among them is their ability to communicate information in real time around the world. Pages like Facebook allow the user to publish material of all kinds that they can then share among their contacts. While others, such as LinkedIn, are more related to the business environment and job search. But there is no doubt about something: social networks are affecting in one way or another the real relationships that people maintain. From the creation of a profile with our mail, an overwhelming number of invitations will begin to arrive to add people to the contact list. At first this is easy to handle, but over time messages from unknown and spam publications will appear that end up making the experience somewhat uncomfortable. Also, mobile devices have made it easier to surf the internet from anywhere. Through a smartphone or tablet you can access any page, and this makes it possible to enroll in more social networks. In this way, users are motivated to create more profiles. And here the first problem is presented. Since people invest a significant amount of time to maintain their accounts. On the other hand, there is the social aspect, which is often limited to virtuality. Well, it is worth mentioning that not all the contacts that a user has in their profile are friends or people who frequent in the real world. Social networks are accustoming people to keep communication at a distance, and the habit of holding meetings for student purposes or simply leisure is lost. The new generations are obsessed with the latest technologies. They spend most of the day in front of the computer or cannot be separated from their cell phones. This causes that the time dedicated to the real interaction with other human beings is reduced, even when dealing with family members. In addition, it affects their performance in studies and work, as they prefer to be distracted by any irrelevant content that appears on the screen. Since its appearance, social networks have become an essential part of people's routine. However, the benefits they offer are contrasted by their potential to negatively affect interpersonal relationships in the real world. Some people prefer to build relationships only through those pages, and their communication skills inevitably deteriorate. The time they invest in trivial activities is worrisome, affecting their studies, work, and other aspects of their lives. Cat 36. The impact of the Internet on new generations. The Internet has revolutionized our daily life in different aspects. Through mobile technologies, it has caused people to be more hyperactive, because they have developed a superficial thought that starts from the informative immediacy and the lack of concentration. The problem of all this is reflected in the habits with which the new generations are growing. They are so systematic and repetitive that they have the potential to negatively affect certain basic capacities for critical judgment. Today's teenagers, who are always aware of social networks and viral trends through the Internet, are not interested in reading. They have become accustomed only to see the titles or the beginning of each news, publication, or page. They assume that everything they find is true. They do not engage in research to learn more about it and come to a conclusion of their own. It is a generation that only finds satisfaction in what is new, regardless of its content or quality. The important thing is that it is linked to fashion, allowing them to interact with their contemporaries to engage in conversations on highly trivial topics, while the routine is seen as something unbearable and boring. On the other hand, Internet addiction is something that is becoming increasingly common in recent years. This is not only limited to adolescents, but involves different areas of society. In many jobs, for example, most activities are performed in front of a computer. People have to be connected at all times, developing an obsession that can have serious consequences. Since, like any technology, it is up to each individual to define the positive or negative effects that it will have on his or her life. The deterioration in reflective capacity, reasoning, and analysis are some of the most alarming disadvantages of its inappropriate use. It is evident that current generations are changing social paradigms. The comfort that the Internet gives them always motivates them to find the easy way out. They copy jobs for the school, institute, or university, and prefer to avoid the acquisition of long-term knowledge, opting for instantaneous alternatives through their mobile devices. However, it is also necessary to emphasize that they are growing with a more inclusive mentality of the world. Also, thanks to the new communication systems, many young people have already established their own businesses, which use the Internet as a platform for distributing products or carrying out contact with customers. Cat 37. Respect for opinion in the mass media. Among the most important human values is respect, which can be manifested in different areas. In society, it is worth reflecting on respect and tolerance on the ideas expressed by other people. It is one of the bases of all democracy, and must always be present to preserve a harmonious existence in every town, city, or country. Even more so if we take into account that the Internet has brought everyone closer, and should be encouraged from an early age to avoid situations that can lead to regrettable consequences. To begin, I will quote a phrase from the famous Chinese thinker Confucius: "Do not do to others what you would not like them to do to you, or do to you what you would not do to others." They are simple words, but they contain a great depth if we pause briefly to analyze them. They speak of always respecting the opinion of others, in the same way that we want our opinion to be respected by others. It is logical, perhaps obvious, but ends up being left out in the mass media, especially on the internet. You can find cases of people who are attacked when they express their ideas on pages such as Facebook or YouTube, either textually, with images or even videos. Something worrisome if you take into consideration that many times not only is limited to this, but the lack of respect in some people becomes a need to attack anyone who does not share their opinion. On certain occasions this can be transformed into what is known as cyberbullying. Although there may be a predominant religion in a particular country, a political orientation more valid for particular reasons, or a predisposition to traditional ways of thinking of some kind, nothing justifies being intolerant. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights clearly stipulates that every individual can express their thoughts freely. However, respect and tolerance must always be taken into consideration. We are part of a society, and the only way to live in harmony is by understanding the importance of these values. The ideas that a person expresses only represent their perspective of the world. They are based on a reality that can vary drastically with what is lived in another country. So, you always have to take this into account, praising respect above all things when we express our opinion in mass media such as the internet. Nobody is right in issues as biased as religion, politics, or culture. While giving in discussions of little relevance is a sign of magnanimity. KAAA 38. The failures of the democratic system in Western countries. From its origins, the idea of democracy has been considered diffuse and even controversial. This is due to both economic factors and social hierarchy, which cause a series of contradictions between the ruling class and the people. Thus, in most Western countries it is a system of government that is located between the oligarchy and tyranny, with officials who prioritize the accumulation of material wealth above all things. Faced with this reality, public confidence has been fading. Likewise, problems such as terrorism, the dissolution of national identity and the increase of border controls have led to the disappearance of certain basic foundations for a liberal order, hindering the search for political alternatives to properly integrate with the globalized world. This lack of legitimacy in the democratic system translates into the need to transcend the legal and political environment. It should enhance the plurality of interests and beliefs, rethinking its structure in order to regulate the conflict through consensus. If we take into account the high rates of rejection of power embodied in a single individual, we find that people are demanding a new form of democracy, where their essential principles are respected and that they do not become distorted over time. Another aspect to consider is the renewal of politics in its different spheres. The cynicism that has always shown, where corruption does not try to hide behind clear private interests, must be eradicated at all costs. However, it is a mistake to think that this depends on the state and the creation of specific programs or institutions. The agents of change are really the new generations, who have to learn to reflect and analyze each candidate objectively. This change of vision is a very important part to develop better concepts about democracy and citizenship. Like all creation of man, it is a system with serious defects, which have to be corrected to adapt to the cultural and social changes that are being experienced. Aspects such as exclusion and heterogeneity no longer have a place in today's world, being necessary to think of the whole and coexistence in harmony. In many Western countries you can witness a kind of democratic dictatorship, with elections that seek to convey a false idea of justice and popular decision. The economic problems end up adding to the cultural ones, and the vindication of the national identity becomes a priority of each government. Politics has to abandon fundamentalism and concentrate on solving real problems, instead of promises that only serve to generate media impact.